Okay, today we are covering section 4.3, which is applications of linear equations. We are only covering the first objective, which is to use linear equations to solve problems. I am limiting the number of real-world applications. I want to concentrate on just the simple um, fact of being able to translate what I like to call translate from English to math. Okay. For example, when I see these words in a sentence, then I'm going to know that that means addition. So I'm going to have a plus sign in there somewhere. When I see these words, I'm going to subtract. I see these words multiplication, and these are going to be division. So let's go ahead. I'm going to do some examples, and then I want you to work some problems on your own. So according to a survey by the Kaiser Family Foundation, the number of minutes per day that teens spend watching TV exceeds the number of minutes listening to music by 120. If X represents the number of minutes each day listening to music, the number of minutes spent watching TV can be represented how? So, what's important here, and keep in mind, I've been doing word problems for a long time, and I have to read them more than once to understand what it is they're asking me and what I need to know or how I need to translate it. It's not always, boom, read it once and I have an answer. So, that's something you need to consider. You want to go highlight the information. First of all, they told us that X represents the number of minutes each day listening to music. Okay? So this is going to be my X right here, number of minutes listening to music. And then we have the number of minutes per day watching TV. So if the number of minutes, it tells me that the number of minutes they watch TV exceeds, and so exceeds is what? If I look back up there, exceeds. Do we see exceeds? We don't see it on our list, so we got to think about what does that mean. And hopefully, exceeds means it's kind of like it's more than. That's a number that's greater. Okay? So the amount of time watching TV is more than the number of minutes listening to music by 120. So how much can I say? So I have the number of minutes that I'm watching, excuse me, listening to music, and if I add 120 to it, then I will get the amount that I'm watching TV. But again, read it many times. See if that makes sense. The number of minutes, this is supposed to represent the number of minutes watching TV. Does, if that's TV watching, okay, so keep this in mind. This whole thing represents the TV watching. Does that more than the amount for music plus 120? And that's what that is. So that's how we know we're on the right track. Okay, in this next set, or this next problem, you're supposed to determine whether each equation is written correctly or it correctly models the given conditions, and if it's incorrect, make the necessary changes to produce an accurate model. So I'm going to determine whether or not it correctly models the situation, given conditions, and if it's not, I'm going to make changes. So we have a car rental company charges $120, $125 per week plus $20, excuse me, 20 cents per mile to rent one of its cars. If I spend $335 for the week, I can find the number of miles driven by solving this equation for X. So we've had this kind of problem before, and that's kind of why I wanted you to see it again. So let's see if that makes sense. The car rental company charges $125. They want to know just for 1 week. So there's my 125 plus 20 cents per mile. Well, does it show 20 cents per mile? No, it doesn't. So this one is not correct. And so, but if I change my subtraction to addition, does that make sense? So that's $125 per week plus 20 cents per mile is the total amount of money of $335. And that works. So we've corrected the problem. Okay, now, most of what you're going to be doing is just some simple working with numbers because this is a basic step before you go into some harder word problems. So, Look at this. When 2 times the number is decreased by 3, the result is 11. Okay? So when I say translate, I'm talking literally translate. So this says, we always, when I say what's the number, that's what my x is going to be. But we write 2. Actually, I might write it on top of it. You have 2 times is, of course, multiplication. A number we just said was x is decreased by. That means I take this number and I decrease it by 3. So that means I'm going to subtract 3. And the result is, okay? So whenever you see result is or often is not followed by anything else, that's your equal sign, 11. So there's my equation right there. 2x minus 3 equals 11. So then you will continue and we're going to add 3 to both sides because we are collecting variables on one side and constants on the other. Positive and a negative becomes 0. So 2x equals 14. And then I divide by my coefficient of my variable and I find out that x equals 7. Now, when you answer it, it's a word problem and there's no x in the question. So in the answer blank, you're just going to put 7. Now, how can you check that? I want you not to put it back in your equation, but I want you to check it with the words in the problem. When 2 times a number, if I take 2 times 7 is 14, and I decrease it by 3, is 14 minus 3 equal 11? It does, and that checks. So make sure you write that down. All right, let's try another one. When a number is decreased by 30% of itself, so again, x is that number, is decreased by is my minus. We've talked about that. That's my minus sign. 30%, remember we cannot write percents in an equation, so I'm going to write 0.3 of, everybody knows of means multiplication, itself is that number x, then the result is 28. So my equation looks like x minus 0.3x equals 28. Now when you're solving that, remember we've talked about the coefficient of this variable is the number 1 that we don't have to write. So 1 minus 0.3 is 0.7x equals 28. And then we divide both sides by 0.7. And x equals 40. Again, what you put in the answer blank, what you're going to box for your final answer is just the 40, not the variable. So you would use a calculator to check it. But 40 is decreased by 30% of 40. And if you know 30% of 40 is 12. So 40 minus 12 equals 28. And we're good to go. All right, how about this one? When 80%, 0.8 of is my times, a number, is added to. So hopefully you know that's going to be plus to the number. The result is, in this case, it's 252. So my equation is going to be 0.8x plus x equals 252. And just like we said, there's a 1 in front of that. So 0.8 plus 1 is, of course, 1.8x equal to 252. And I'm going to divide both sides by 1.8. Oops. I tell y'all that all the time. Don't ever divide by that variable. I don't know why I wrote that x. So divide by 1.8 both sides. And x is going to equal 140. So my answer will be 140. So you use your calculator and find out what 80% of 140 is and add it to 140 and see if you don't get 252. All right, 70% of what number is 252? So similar to what we've been doing, 70% is 0.7 of is times what number is 252. So all the other examples said the result is, but if you see is by itself, not with is added to or something of that sort, remember that's where your equal sign always is. Okay, so 0.7x equals 252. I'm going to divide both sides by 0.7, and I'm going to find out that x equals 360. So my answer is 360. Okay, the last example is just writing an expression. Write an English phrase as an algebraic expression, then simplify the expression. Let x represent the number. So, a number decreased by, remember we talked about that was minus, the difference. So the fact that they gave me this word as I'm decreasing it by the difference means I got to put this difference in parentheses. And what is the difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So between 8 and the number, so that's 8 and the number. So that's the original straight translation. They also asked us to simplify it. So this would be the answer to the first part. And then to simplify, x minus 8 plus x plus x is 2x minus 8. So we have simplified it. Okay, so I've done several examples. You have some to do yourself. I want to point out to you that this is your classwork is on one page, but on the back of your classwork is lots of examples of translations. So you can look at them and find out how it's written. You can practice study yourself by covering them up, reading it, and see if you can write it, and then uncover it and see if you have it. But I've given you lots of examples to review and help you as you work on your translation. So at the bottom of this, to let me know that you've listened, I want you to write Great Study Guide. That's what this is. It's examples for a great study guide. And if you have any other questions, please come see me.